This is the History of New Zealand Drum and Bass series, celebrating over 25 years of drum and bass in Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome along. It is another episode of the History of New Zealand Drum and Bass podcast, and we're heading to Berlin right now, thanks to a very dear friend and quite easily one of the foundation layers of the New Zealand drum and bass scene, DJ Presha, aka Geoff Wright. How you doing, bro?
Good, mate. How are you?
Good to hear from you. I've been sort of spinning yarns about your involvement in the drum and bass scene since the start of the podcast, and I'm glad we finally made this happen. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's good to chat.
Yeah, bro, totally. So, I mean, this could really go on for a couple of hours. Your background is so rich and diverse. Like, you come from skateboarding. We were just chatting before we started the podcast about how you're just getting back into skateboarding now, but you're also heavily involved in rock scene, punk rock, and all sorts of stuff growing up throughout your career. Do you want to give us a little bit of a background about that and how music came into your life?
Well, I was the youngest of 5 kids, and my older brothers and sisters were really deeply into music, and so I had a real melting pot of music all the way through my life, and I just kind of found the things that I liked in there, and they led me on different journeys. And what really changed my life, not just with sport, but musically as well, was when I started really seriously skateboarding, like when I was 10 years old or something. And my mother got remarried, and we moved to Manurewa, and it was just when Aotearoa was built. And so I was going there every day. Basically, I didn't want school or anything. I just wanted to go skateboarding. And through that, I started meeting guys, a lot of older guys who were into music, and that's how I discovered punk rock and hardcore and stuff like that, and blah blah blah. And so I just got really deeply into music as well as the skateboarding, and my interest in music got deeper and deeper, and I got led away into certain things. And obviously, I was in the late 80s. I was in a thrash metal band called Enigma, and one of our claims to fame was we played support for the first ever Metallica tour in New Zealand. And then I left that band and went on a OE to the UK. That was, and kind of dove into the rock scene over there. And that was when I first ever DJ'd. I was playing rock records on a Friday night at the Astoria in London. And that was kind of my taste of DJing. Like every Friday I'd play, what was it at the time? Guns N' Roses and stuff like that to a bunch of long-haired people on acid and stuff, and it wasn't just stuff like that. That was the time when Jane's Addiction and Nirvana and so all starting. I saw amazing gigs over there, one of Nirvana's first ever gigs in the UK. So same with Jane's Addiction and stuff. But it's just such a rich musical thing. And then that was the time we were going to raves, because that was the only thing that was open really late in London. And I ended up at an acid house rave. This was 92 or something. And I was like, whoa, this is mad.
Proper acid house days.
Yeah, proper. And I was there in leather pants and long hair, to be honest. And the only reason I went there is because it was the only place you could go to hear music all night, on the weekend, So, but I was kind of touched by that. And then I came back to New Zealand, and that was when I ended up moving to Christchurch to live with Cheryl, and I was just playing hip hop actually. And what was that bar called? Richard Till's bar?
What's the bar?
Yeah. Espresso 124.
Oh, Espresso 124, yeah. Corner of Cashel Wall and Oxford Terrace.
I just used to drink there, and Richard Till was such I hope I've got his name right. But he was such a lovely guy, and he really wanted to encourage me to DJ more, because he enjoyed what I was playing. And so and then I got a job at Echo Records, and obviously
this is around the time that you and I met.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and,
so we're talking about 94, 95 here, or early 95.
Yeah. And then I got turntables because Richard was so nice and encouraging me. And obviously I've been friends with Roger Perry and Manuel Bundy since way back in the early days. Before, like in the middle of my rock days, I used to go to the Asylum and the Playground and listen to Roger play. And, you know, obviously I was a big Manuel fan. And Richard gave me the opportunity to bring some DJs down, and I think I bring Roger down. I definitely bring Manuel down and to play at Espresso 124, and Manuel gave me some DJ lessons, and I was playing hip hop and funk and all sorts, and that went on for a while, and then I think Richard kind of ran out of interest with the Espresso 124, and then Liquor Lounge started, and
that's right.
And I used to DJ at Liquor Lounge from beginning to end on a Saturday or something. And I used to start with like deep house, go through to techno, and end up on drum and bass, you know. And at the time, I was kind of I was working at Echo Records, me and Matt O'Brien, and we were sharing the buying. And I started like speaking to vinyl distribution, who were the people at the time for all the drum and bass and stuff. And it's really hard to explain. I was talking to someone about this the other day. Like, can you imagine? We used to have to buy records by them playing 30 seconds of them down the phone from London. And we had to decide how many we were going to import into New Zealand and how many were going to sell from that. You know?
Yeah.
And you know, and then it wasn't like you could just like up your order or anything. Like when they were on the way, that was it.
That was it. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, you know, and so when it sold out. But I mean, obviously, I had a huge passion coming from there, and followed it. And you know, I mean, there was like when I met and got to know you, first time meeting Riddle. First time, and you know, obviously what Slipmat and Pylons were doing at the time was hugely influential. Like they were doing the first kind of, you know, they were doing big raves, but they were taking the chance of putting drum and bass on in their rooms, which was really unheard of at the time, you know?
Yeah, totally. And also Christchurch as well, as we've been saying, it also had a very kind of a mixed dance culture. You know, you wouldn't get just drum and bass at a rave until later on down the line, whereas it was sort of very sort of mixed. You'd have trance, you'd have hip hop, you'd have house, you'd have drum and bass or jungle, usually playing a lot earlier in the morning rather than at the prime time slots, you know?
Yeah, but the thing was, we all had the same energy. Like all the people, you know, everyone that was in every room had the same kind of energy, even though drum and bass was different for them. They were open to it, you know, and it really felt like a family vibe down there. So that was, Christchurch was really formative for me, and watching what was going on and how it developed. And then I was corresponding with Roger, obviously, because he's one of my best lifelong mates, and he told me about Calibre. They were opening this club called Calibre, and they were looking for like a resident DJ. And he's like, send me a tape. So I sent him a tape, and it was all the kind of stuff I was playing at Liquor Lounge, and I got the job.
Yep, I remember.
So I moved.
I was staying with you at the time, and you were like, "You're gonna have to move out because I'm off to Auckland." I'll see you later.
See, you've got to better remember. I'm piecing this together from shards of memory. So
yeah,
I'm great.
It does get dull. Trust me.
I'm grateful for the help. But and then I mean, you know, we had a network then, like, you know, me, you, Riddle,
48 Sonic,
Dave, 48 Sonic, and you know, we were kind of like, we were just all focused on moving, like it was just engulfing our lives, and we couldn't do anything else really. And
it was. And
so when I moved to Auckland, I started. I was the Friday night and Saturday night resident at Calibre. I think it was one night. I think it was 2 nights, mate. It might have been just one night. And I quickly discovered that playing house music wasn't really for me. And and I think they figured that out as well. So the guys that owned Calibre were like, we know you really like this drum bass stuff. And I was like, what do you want to do? I was like, well, give me a night and I'll do a night. And obviously I was already speaking to D-Rave and you and everyone and Sonic and blah, blah, Aaron Riddle. And they were like, okay, we'll give it, we're not doing it on Thursday. We'll give it a try and see how it goes. And yeah, that was the breaks. So we started that off and wow, that kind of like that. And I realized it wasn't the first night there, but I think if when everyone looks back on history, it's kind of the night where people will remember it as where the scene really started to get a foothold in the dance and create its own identity,
Yeah, so I actually went trolling on the internet the other day, and there is a clip on the internet on YouTube from 1996, and it is when you guys had started the breaks. Yeah, and it's you, Aaron, and 48 Sonic. I'm just gonna let this play, and let the people sort of see the media's take on drum and bass back in those days.
But first, some pounding sound. To some, it's just nasty noise, but to a growing number of clubbers around the country, drum and bass is the rhythm of choice. At Auckland's Calibre Club, it's been blaring for 2 months now, and now every drum and bass night is packed.
The early hours of Friday morning, and this tiny K Road club is filling fast. They're here for the latest dance beat from the UK, a beat called drum and bass. The frantic rhythm was born out of London's rave culture in the late 80s. A myriad of sounds are used, but every track has the fast-paced drums and backbeats as a bass line, and every track is played very, very loud.
It's an exercise in pushing the sound system. It in no way cancels out sort of live music. It's more about exercising the mind and using the computer to enhance that.
Gone are traditional lyrics, all that's left are raw beat.
I think music contains too many messages and doesn't let people think anymore, especially rock music. Everyone's pretty tired of hearing guys moaning about how depressing their lives are,
To me, it's not about just individual tunes and stuff like that. It's all how it's sort of mixed together and everything, It
doesn't say anything to you. It lets you make up your own mind and feel your own feelings without being guided, and that's the most important thing about it.
Even in the UK, drum and bass is still an underground sound, but more and more musicians are picking up on it. Kiwi jazz genius Nathan Haynes, now based in London, is using the drum and bass beat in his latest tracks. And at Calibre nightclub, the drum and bass DJs are pulling bigger crowds every week.
Constant thing with drum and bass is to go forward. It's future music, it's looking for the 21st century, and they're always looking for the next step, the next beat, the next bass line. It's always going forward, it never goes backwards.
And while they doubt it will ever go mainstream, fans reckon that the hunger for the beat hasn't peaked yet.
The future? I think that we're onto a monster here. It's just going to keep growing.
Drum and bass is yet to make a big splash outside Auckland, but DJs say listen out for the sound at one-off gigs soon. This is Alistair Wilkinson for Nightline.
So there you go. That was TV3 back in 1996 covering. It was on Nightline covering the breaks. That's how much of an impact drum and bass had it almost felt overnight, right?
Yeah, and we went from, I think the second night there we had a line outside all night, the whole night. And the guy, it was so much more popular than their weekends. They were okay, so.
Yeah. So to put things into perspective time-wise, Goldie had just, the year before, had released Timeless, because I remember I was staying with you in Christchurch, and you'd reviewed and interviewed Goldie for Pavement magazine, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was a real big thing that happened as well. As I was writing and stuff for Pavement, and I got the chance to talk to Goldie, and we hit it off. I mean, he's a great guy to talk to, and I don't know if you can explain to people now what that felt like in the middle of what was going on to speak. That was the pinnacle. Goldie was
it was.
He was the god, and so and it was just when Timeless was coming out. So it was when his creativity was just peaking, and getting to share some of it with him at that time was pretty amazing feeling. And he was like, "Oh, so how are you guys getting the music out there?" And I was like, "Oh, well, it's really difficult. You know, we get like one shipment a month or something, and you know, there's a bunch of us who want the same records, and if they're gone kind of thing." And he's like, "Oh, yeah, I'll put you onto the ladies who run my label." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." And he's like, "Yeah, I'll get Kiwi and Storm to link you." And I'm like, "What?" Can you say it again? I really hope you're not one of those guys who promises shit and then doesn't follow through, because you're saying something really good right now. And so yeah, I mean, that was a really big thing, as you know. Like, obviously, I started speaking to Kiwi and Storm, and hours and hours of phone calls, and they were just so amazing. Like they were like a lifeline to the scene for me, and not just me, for all of us.
They absolutely were, bro. For all of us, man. Yep.
Because I'd pass it on, and then obviously they started sending me TPs, which like everyone wanted to kill me for, kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's another thing that I look back at it so fondly now, because it's like in the time it was like, oh, it meant everything to have the tunes. You know what I mean? And now we look back at it, it's like, man, it was friendly competition, but man, we used to get so mad at each other when one of us had a tune and the other one didn't, and just because it really put you on the map. People would come to hear those tunes get played, and if you were the one that had those tunes, your sets were the ones that went off the most. And you know, just I remember watching back sometimes, and just you and 48 Sonic going at it with one another, just throwing down dubs and shit. And some of those nights, that regardless of the fact there's no internationals there, or if you guys were on support, it didn't matter. Those were some of the hardest sets, you know, like because they were just. The camaraderie as well as the competitive nature of us all it was freaking awesome, because we all knew we were onto something brand new. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I remember the night we all got shadow boxing. Everyone played it. Like, you can't beat those memories, man. Like, nothing will ever touch it. Kind of having that feeling, like we would all, like when we all got a New Source Direct tune. You know?
Yes.
Like, and. I have to say, thinking back, the only person who really stood out, and I'm not saying we didn't all do our own thing, but really was a kind of a enigma amongst us all, was Aaron. You know, like,
oh, absolutely.
He kind of like, he shaped and drew things a different way, and Do you want to give the audience like a little idea of who Aaron is and what he did for drum and bass in New Zealand, or breakbeat in New Zealand, and hardcore in New Zealand? You know. Well, I don't really know. I mean, I may have forgotten a huge amount of Aaron's background, but for me, like when I first started putting together, obviously I had to make a decision about who were going to be the residents at the breaks, and even though it was my night and I had. You know, I was doing okay as a DJ. I always put myself at the bottom. Like, I wanted to elevate the guys for me who I thought were the most influential in Auckland at the time.
Yeah,
and totally. You know, obviously Sonnet and Riddle. Like, Riddle always blew me away with his DJing. Like, one of those effortlessly tight guys who, like, you know, you're like, okay, great. Now I have to follow him, kind of thing. You know? But Aaron, like, you know, like he was just on a different level for me. Like, I just, when I listened to him, I felt like I was tripping, even though I wasn't. You know, like, he just he picked tunes and shaped, put his sets together in a way that I don't really think I've ever heard anyone else, you know, do. He had a mysticism, and he wasn't like Mr. He wasn't like Mr. like, I'm going to mix every second. Like, there wasn't really a lot of mixing going on, but it was really, really different approach.
Yeah, his approach was mixing and blending atmospheres and sort of taking you on a journey through sound, rather than like, it's so freaking hard to describe, right?
Yeah, but see, like, he's the kind of DJ where you let go your preconceptions of technical DJing and just listen to it as a whole thing. Yeah. And and Aaron, obviously, he was a tattooist as well, and that was something I was into. But I never really felt like I got that close to Aaron personally, even though I kind of tried. But like, he for me was really like the guy who I always thought, no drum and bass lineup in Auckland is really complete without Aaron.
Without him.
Thing.
Yeah. It's awesome because he put on a lot of parties prior to the breaks as well. He was doing a hardwired.
That's right. Sorry, I forgot about that.
Yeah, there was a
My
few other
memory's
raves.
terrible.
I remember the first time I saw Aaron play was a shed on the waterfront down in Wellington, and we'd all hitchhiked up from Christchurch to go and see like Tank Girl and Slipmat and Aaron, Plankton and Scrimshank. And I just remember Aaron getting up on the stage and he had his hoodie up and fucking a bandana over his face, and it was like some of the fucking hardest scenes to, you know, like a 17-year-old kid who's just like watching this god playing this fucking amazing music that finally was like, you know, some decent bass lines in the building. It was, yeah.
Yeah, see, I missed that because I was really in Christchurch when all that was going on, you know, and I missed kind of like the first time Groove Rider came and the first time Ed Rush came.
Yeah,
I wasn't there. So, yeah. And so that segues nicely into the next bit, which was when, you know, D-Rave started coming to the breaks and we got on really well. And he was in touch with like Emotive, I think, at the time.
Yes, yep, Sound of the Underground and Emotive.
And, yeah, we just hit it off, and I think he was working with Andy and Omni at the time, and it was Subtronix was evolving, and I think he saw the organisational stuff that I was doing and the contacts I had, and thought it would be a good combination if we worked together. So we gave it a try, and yeah, I mean it did work, and straight away pretty much, and we started bringing internationals out together, and the breaks kind of dissolved not long after that, and we focused more on bringing internationals over, which was a really big thing for, I guess, 10 years or so. You know,
yeah, this is where drum and bass really started getting its foundations. Like having those internationals coming out that you guys were bringing out is, you know, we had the creme de la creme of the biggest international DJs and producers playing in New Zealand on a Friday and Saturday night in respective cities around the country, and the scene just absolutely took off from there, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's wild when you think back to all the effort that had to go into doing that, and all the early days of actual like putting together a sound system and all the technical, like all that stuff, you know, like it was really primitive at that time, you know, like and it was touch and go. I don't know how we got away with a lot of it, you know, like it's kind of when you think back, it's a miracle really that we got through it all. But yeah, I mean, it was so, at the time, all I wanted to do was just make things, you know, make more people hear it, because I believed in it so much. And you know, having people like Groove and Scotty and having those people come out here and see their excitement about playing here. Like, you know, obviously, I'm not sure how many people know about this, but Scotty and Groove had like a unspoken competition about who could play the longest out here.
I've talked about this. I thought Chemistry and Storm and Goldie got in on this action as well, but it was mainly between Scotty and Groove Rider, wasn't it?
It was Scotty and Groove Rider. Yeah, they would both ask, oh yeah, how long did he do? Oh yeah. And then that was when Scotty went, yeah, Geoff, I don't want any support DJs. I'm just going to play all night. And I'm like, whoa, okay.
So he played like a 12-hour set. He basically didn't finish soundcheck. He just kept on playing from soundcheck onwards. Yeah. And then just that was it. And he played right through till the end of the night. It was fucking insane. And he never, ever doubled up on a tune. Yeah. Every single tune was fresh for 12 hours. Yeah. And that was all vinyl and all acetates.
Yeah.
Mental.
Yeah, insane.
Mental, bro. You know, like Andy C now, like, you know, all due respect to Andy, but he does a thing and it's a big show when he plays for 4 hours. You know, it's called the Andy C All Nighter. And it's like, these ain't all nighters, bro. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, you were there at so many of these as well. Like I remember, I can remember strongly being with you standing behind Groove Rider at Ministry, and we witnessed one of the fucking most amazing sets by this guy. We're both just standing there going, oh my God, it's just not going to stop, is it?
There was no, it was relentless, and also there was nothing to say. Like we were both, it was communicating without talking in any way, shape or form. A, because it was so fucking loud in there, but B, our faces said it all, bro.
Yeah. I'll never forget, I've got so many good memories of people, but Groove really, like, for me, like, cracked me up the most. I remember the first time we had him at the box, like, it was obviously not the first time I'd been there, but the first time I put him on, and it was like at the peak of the Blue Note sound, metalheads, blah blah, and I had to go keep checking on the sound system because he was trying really hard to blow it up, and I went up there and he was playing dubs, like all these 10-inch dubs, and then he would take them off, not put them back in their covers, just set them down on top of each other in this pile of used dubs, and he was tipping his spliff out on them.
It was quite often as well when guys like that would roll through, especially him and Brian G, that like people would also, you would end up with a couple of spare dubs that were found sort of underneath the stage at the Ministry, or Nick D would end up with some tunes like Brian G's dub plates of.
We shouldn't go too deep into that.
No, I think enough time's passed.
I do remember, and this is something for drum and bass fans that will really interest them, like long-term people, is there was a real, when that Conflict tune Messiah, when that came out, and like basically the whole scene revolved around that tune. If you didn't have that tune, you might as well just go home, because it just shut down the whole night basically.
Absolutely, bro.
And I remember like talking to Scotty about it, and he was like, I'm sick of how much it's dominating things. And he's like, here, Geoff, you can have my plate. I don't care about it anymore. I'm like, thanks.
I remember getting back from London and walking down to Foo Bar when it was down on Queen Street, and you were playing in the small Foo Bar, the Foo side, and you had Messiah on plate, and I think you played that 3 or 4 times and rewound it every time, and not a single person left the dance floor either, because it was like they went there to hear that motherfucking tune. You know what I mean? It was madness, like
drugs.
It was the first viral. Oh no, you know what? I reckon like the 9 was probably the start of tunes with big personalities. You know what I mean?
Thing is, I remember the 9 because that was at the Breaks too at Herzog, and we played it a lot, and no one got it. Like, it took really a long time for people to get to cotton onto that tune. I was like, I don't really understand why people aren't getting this tune. It's huge. And it was it took a while, that one, to kick in. I remember, and I was thinking, our crowd's really educated, and this is something that the internationals used to always talk about, is that the crowd was really educated, and which was hard when you didn't really have the internet informing people. But it took them a while to get the 9.
I remember getting a copy of it and then playing it down at a Point Blank at Calibre on a Sunday night, and it was when we did like a couple of those little Point Blanks before I took it down to Christchurch.
Oh, yeah.
Fucking hell, mate. And I played it there, and my mate Pari had a copy of it, and he let me it for the night. Didn't own it myself, but it was the first copy that was in the country on release or something like that, and I fucking played it, and I just remember it flooring the fucking place, man. It was like, oh my God. But I think you're right, the tunes like that. You know, remember like Conflict started coming through, and fucking like, you know, the Beckoning came
I remember
through.
the Medicine took ages for people to get as well.
Medicine remix,
and that was around the same time.
Yeah, Medicine.
No, the first one, the original Virus 001.
Yeah. It's true. That is true. Virus took off slowly. Like, it was very much Matt's Opticals kind of sound. It wasn't Ed Rush and Optical. It was very much Matt Opticals kind of sound first, right?
But that was the only sound then, really.
Yeah, it
like
was.
Everyone was just like, Anyway.
The number one producer.
Well, I suppose we should carry on. So, thinking about it, it just continued from there with us bringing internationals basically until for 10 years or so, and we brought just about everyone out that we possibly could, made loads of contacts, and, you know, like bringing Goldie out was a really big one. Like, we got him to do some shows after Big Day Out, which was mental. Yeah,
I remember that. What would you say was some of the turning points? Like, you know, some of those sets and from some of the DJs that came out that really fucking sort of took the scene in different directions, especially because you were doing Auckland, Wellington and Christchurch, you were able to see, you know, which scenes were sort of connecting better with these artists and all that. You know, did you have those turning points? Were they noticeable moments for you?
Scotty, first time Scotty came, like that really changed everything. I think it's the first time for all of them. Like first time I did groove, like I felt a shift, a seismic shift, because that was like he came at the peak of the Blue Note time, you know. And I think that Ed Rush and Trace tour, that was a really big turning point.
Oh, we should obviously mention that DJ Trace lived out here in New Zealand for a bit as well, right?
He did.
He became
and he was a semi-resident at the Breaks.
That's right.
Along with A-Sides.
That's right. DJ A-Sides as well, who I'm chatting to at the end of the month. Obviously, he was the very first international that came and sort of spent a little bit of time in New Zealand, and he did this one seminal set on fucking 95 BFM, which was recorded, and that tape made its way around the whole country, and that was enough to get us by until Groove Rider came. I remember that. Yeah. Oh, the tapes, mate.
The tape wars.
See, this is another thing as well, right? So some of these sets from some of these international artists, we were sneakily recording. We weren't supposed to at all. We lived off them. They were biblical, and it kept us up to date with what was coming up for the next 6 months to 2 years, bro. Like, do you remember how long some of the tunes would take to come out? That guys like Scotty and Groove and Goldie were playing.
Yeah. At that time, it was ridiculous.
Yeah, man.
It was. We lived off those tapes, and it's a great memory to have, because now everything's so instant. You know, there's a few DJs I still listen to, and I go, oh yeah. I want to know that is, but I'm not going to ask him.
Yeah. Yeah, back in the day, I mean, the chin stroking got pretty fucking heavy amongst all us DJs, especially when someone came along. It was like we're almost leaving all the names off our white labels or dubs because we didn't want anyone to know what the tunes were.
It was like that. It was like that. But, you know, there's some people you couldn't get away with it with. Like, Sonic had a way of, like, getting it out of you no matter what. Like, he'd massage his shoulders until you told him who it was.
Yeah.
But obviously, I was at the time, that's the bit I left out, is not long after I moved to Auckland, I started distributing, through Dave's linking me up, I started distributing a motif, like bringing records over. And then I didn't think that was enough, so I started speaking to Full Cycle and No U-Turn. So I started my distribution career with those three labels, Emotive, Full Cycle, and No U-Turn. And then from there, I started talking to SRD and Vinyl Distribution and started doing their distribution in New Zealand. And so I ended up doing that as a business for like 15 years or so.
Yeah, and like you literally, like, I mean, fuck, just to put things in perspective for people who consume music these days who never really thought about what it was like to collect vinyl or anything like that, or buy vinyl to DJ and play in clubs, but there was only a small amount of record stores we could go to back in those days to fucking actually get this music, right? And if we weren't mates with you, then you were pretty much a pleb, and you fucking didn't get a look in, and you weren't going to get any gigs if you didn't have the whites, if you didn't have the connection to the promos or anything like that. And you know, there was only a small amount of fucking record stores around the country that are actually stocking this music at this time, right?
And obviously I only got so many white TPs and stuff, and that created a bit of a, like, if you don't give them to me, I hate you forever kind of thing, you know. But I mean, it was great to have those and get them, and you know, even if not everyone got them, we all got to hear them, you know, kind of thing.
Yeah. No, it was always, I mean, it was unless you're on the bad, unless someone was on the bad side of you.
But a lot of the times, let's look back at it honestly. A lot of the times that was, people were on the ended up on the bad side of me because they resented me having that, you know. And maybe I could have been an asshole back in those days as well. But like, I definitely, you know, I liked having them, but I didn't want that responsibility. You know, I didn't want to have to pick if I've got 3, but I've got 4 or 5 close mates. Like, you know, when you've got that, you're actually shaping what happens. And I didn't want that power at all. Like, everyone thought that I relished in it, but there's no way I did. Like, I hated it. You know, I wanted all of us guys to have them, and it was, and then it started feeding back into it where there was like resentment going back and forth. But anyway,
every kind of scene, every kind of scene's had a pecking order though. I mean, and that's that musical hierarchy goes across all styles of music. It wasn't just those days or that sound as well, you know. So I wouldn't look at it like that. I definitely didn't look at it like that, especially because Josh and I kind of at this stage, I was producing by this stage, so I wasn't really focused on getting vinyl. I wanted dubs, you know what I mean? And that's the only way I could see myself being able to get dubs was
making them,
making music, becoming friends with the artists, you know?
Yeah. So, and that's it. That's the next chapter. Obviously, me and Dave started a label, and we started the label to put your guys' music out.
Exactly, bro. And literally changed mine and Josh's career right from that point onwards, which was fucking awesome.
Yeah, I mean, and that was because of DJ Lee. Basically, he was a mate and he wanted to give me a chance, you know. So me and Dave did that for a while, and we put your guys' first record out. And then you went on to do Cyanide, and so we all had our things starting, and having the label helped us all make more connections with other people. And obviously you were producing and moving up the ranks with producing and stuff, and then there was a kind of split in the scene, not a like a really musical split, but a kind of like that's when we started getting camps kind of coming a little bit more.
Yeah, it's true. And it kind of like, you know, we talk about the Christchurch scene in that respect. There was Scientific that was coming through. It was like Moses and Pylons and all that sort of stuff, sort of doing their thing. And I did a podcast with Tali, and she was talking about how, you know, Scientific for Christchurch, it was like, yeah, you know, Subtronix, they bring down the artists and all that, but it's a Auckland company. It's not a Christchurch company, whereas Scientific was Christchurch's very own first sort of like international touring company, you know, besides a couple of ones that I'd done here and there and other people had done as well. But
definitely, but like, I mean, there was definitely a bit of tension at the start when that kicked off, and there was resentment towards us towards me and Dave, and I didn't really understand it at first. I thought we were all meant to work together, but like, yeah, it was hard because people didn't like seeing us having the only connections to these people, like to DJ them, but to bring them out to DJ. But the thing was that they only really wanted to deal with one person.
Yeah, that was it. Like these were the people that you guys were bringing out were people that you had forged personal friendships by this stage, you know what I mean? It had been 10 years of bringing them out to New Zealand, and I remember at one stage, you know, Christchurch especially being hailed as like by guys like Groove Rider and guys like Dot Scott, Goldie, people like Chemistry and Storm as the second fucking London, and that didn't happen by chance. That was by the work of a lot of fucking people, you know, and Jesus Christ. And if you also think about it as well, back in those days, the pound to the dollar was 3-1. So there was an incredible amount of money on the line for each one of these tours, you know. So
I mean, they didn't want to upset something that they'd had going for so long, and like, you know, like what was being offered different? Not really much, you know. So it was, and I'm not trying to take anyone down a peg or anything. Everyone was doing their bit, but we did have some people trying to. We also have to realistically look at it as. That was Dave and my livelihood. That was our business.
Totally.
You know, if you're going to come after our business, then we're not going to sit there and go, okay, you can have all our business. Thanks.
Oh, you couldn't pick two worse people to fuck with.
But you know, I mean, it was. Look back now, and you know, like a lot of we did. I would say we did. If we're being honest here, I would say Dave and I did tours that we probably shouldn't have done to hold our footing and ended up losing money, you know. But, But I think everyone probably ended up doing that. But I mean, we brought so many amazing people out, and even some of the people that didn't get huge crowds really shaped the musical sound. Like if you think back to like we toured PFM at the peak of his popularity, and Mike, you know, like. He may not have really pulled big crowds, but people talked about that.
People did talk about it, and people connected with him as well, and he ended up spending time out here after that as well.
Yeah.
You know, so,
and you know, I mean, the other people that we're going back to people that were really influential. Marcus, you know,
mate, absolutely. I was hoping he was going to come up in convo. You know, like, Marcus Intellect's one of the most not just the fucking best gentleman, funniest senses of humour, but Jesus Christ, bro, like just some of the sets that he played in New Zealand. The first one with Lee and all that, oh my God, just mind-numbingly good because it was a whole sound. It was like Manchester's sound. It wasn't just London-esque. It had all these new producers that he was cottoning onto at this time. It was fucking groundbreaking, man.
And we brought him out early too. Like he came out early, you know, and and that was a friendship that became like one of my closest friendships, and through all the people I brought out, and I wouldn't be here now in Berlin living here if it wasn't for Marcus. He just bent over backwards to make sure everything worked out for me, you know. Like he was. There's a lot of people that you tour and you get on really well with, and I'm friends with them. I'd say I'm friends with everyone we toured, but like connections, Marcus was really the big one for me. You know, he really went out of his way. You know, Scotty, Jane, and Kimmy, but like Marcus was like he's going to make my life like he's going to do whatever he can to help my life, like down to like writing me letters for my visa and all this stuff, you know.
Well, yeah, fucking legend, man. I mean, speaking of legends from drum and bass who've, you know, still have fingerprints in the New Zealand foundations. I mean, Kimmy's got to be another one of them, man. I mean,
well, Kimmy and Storm definitely, like I don't know why I left them out in that first, but they really changed everything and they empowered a lot of people, and
they did.
They were like DJs of the people, and you know, like they went out and talked to everyone, and Kimmy was like this kind of paternal figure for everyone, and she wanted to make everyone feel special and everyone feel comfortable, you know, and the connection with Kimmy was amazing, and Jane, of course, you know, like both of them were just incredible DJs. Like I was in awe of them every time they played, like just so much guts and just going for it, you know,
and
like
tunes, bro, tunes. I remember Jane would once she hooked me up with her number, I'd call her on a Monday night, which was a Monday morning UK time, and they would just play me the tunes that were the biggest ones that had played at Blue Note the night before, or Swerve, or wherever they'd been playing on Sunday or over the weekend. You know, it was like, and all this brand new Hidden Agenda music, or fucking Source Direct, or you know, just the gutsy metalhead shit that we all loved. You know.
Yeah. Oh, they were amazing. Like I treasure those memories. Like I think,
it's kind of weird, man. I saw Jane out here at Northern Bass, and it just like it was so awesome to see her. But at the same time, I kind of felt bad because so many people there have no idea who DJ Storm is. You know what I mean? And
well, they should get to know.
They should fucking get to know, and hence why we're doing this podcast as well. Is like these stories need to be told because these people were there at the very start.
Like I would say the feeling that Kimmy and Storm injected into our scene, along with the music, but the feeling they injected into the people by just their personalities and how they were, I think there's still like a big thread of that would last forever in the New Zealand scene, you know, like
absolutely, especially amongst the olders, you know.
Yeah, like they will remember, people that have been around for a while will remember that so fondly, and I mean and obviously Kimmy passing away was just one of the most crushing things for me, and they'd just been out here not long before, they'd been out to New Zealand not long before that happened. We're planning their next tour.
And I remember the first tour that Storm did solo after that was just, holy shit. You're right, bro. Like they connected
lots of
with
tears.
the people because the way that Storm was received, I was only there for the Christchurch one at the ministry, but the way she was received and like embraced, and the way that she fucking held her head up, like just... Can you imagine losing your best mate and then...
It's family.
It's family, bro, you know, totally. And then having to go and do a fucking memorial tour in one of your favourite places that you ever played together, you know, which they were very vocal about when they got back to the UK. I remember them saying in an interview that the Christchurch Ministry and Auckland's bars were some of their favourite places to play in the world, you know what I mean? It was like, it just meant so much, and they would definitely...
And that was because of the work we all did, you know, like, I mean, they pitched in obviously with giving us tunes and stuff. So they were planting the seeds, but the work all of us put in, like it was seeing it pay off like that, and the reception they got and she and Jane got alone is just rewarding. Like how many people get to do a job like where they get something like that, you know, like it's amazing. It's amazing.
Totally. So, well, far out, man. We're getting through it. Let's fast forward a little bit. You and Dave go your separate ways. Subtronix shoots off in a different direction, and you carry on with your distribution, and you also start a new label, right?
Yeah. I can't. The timeline's kind of
They're
fuzzy
skewed
for me now, but I carried on doing distribution and rode that into the digital revolution, which ended my business pretty abruptly. But I did start Samurai not long after that. My company, after Subtronix split, I named it Samurai Distribution, and then like it became apparent that I needed to do a label because of new music from people like Trey and State of Mind and blah blah, and so I started the label, and and I did a few tours as well, like on my own. I'm not sure how much of a claim to fame this is, but remember I did the Pendulum tour.
That's right.
The Hold Your Colour release tour.
That's right.
Yeah, and you know, I ended up in Wellington, and like obviously doing a lot of things with D-Dog and stuff, and who was a great guy to share a scene with, and that was when the digital revolution kind of started ending vinyl sales in New Zealand, because obviously it's pretty expensive to import records into New Zealand, and as soon as people could get CDJs and play their digital stuff, they didn't want anything to do with vinyl anymore.
Yeah. I mean, the amount of money we were saving.
$25-$30 a record. Yeah. And, you know, that's it. Jeff's power's gone. No one wants white labels anymore. But, you know, I'd done that for 15 years of my life, and it was so hard to
make a buck.
Watch that go kaput. You know, I ended up opening my own store. I had the Samurai store in Wellington for a while.
That's right.
Just writing it down into like the last amount of money that I could make out of it, and then it just like it was obvious that it was going to go bust. And I went on a trip to Sun and Bass Festival in Sardinia over here, and I stopped in Berlin on the way here and played. And loved Berlin. And, you know, when I was at Sun and Bass, all the people that I'd met and made contact with over the years of doing drum and bass were all there. And they're all like, hey, what are you doing in New Zealand? And I'm like, yeah, I don't really know.
Shit's falling apart, mate.
Shit's falling apart majorly, and I'm ruined. So I don't know. I actually don't know what I'm doing there. So I went home, sold everything I owned, and in the space of 6 months, packed up, sold everything pretty much, and packed a suitcase and came here. And that's the end of it.
Madness. And at this, you weren't a fucking spring chicken when you did this either. Like, you know, like
absolutely no, I was not.
It's a big thing.
And that's what Marcus kept saying to me. He was like, "What? You're doing what?" And I'm like, "Yeah, man, I can't stay here." And he's like, "Oh man, I admire your guts." He just kept saying to me, I can't believe you're doing it. Like, it just takes so much guts to do what you're doing. I'll do whatever I can to help. And I'm like, cool.
Fucking guardian, good guardian angel right there.
Yeah.
But fuck, man, thinking about that whole the scene during that time when everything was digitizing and streaming was coming out, and we weren't playing records anymore. We were playing MP3s and shit. And I was thinking about the other day how you and I were the two biggest customers for a guy called Joe Gube over on the North Shore. Remember this? And so picture this, beautiful Cheltenham Beach on the North Shore, right on the waterfront, literally the house right on the waterfront. The front room of this building has been converted into a dub plate cutting facility. This guy has an eccentric old geezer whose parents, I think, like owned 3 guys. Remember that chain?
3 guys, yeah.
So anyway, his inheritance, he thought it'd be a great idea to go to the UK and purchase all of the gear that was no longer being used at Abbey Road Studios. So he flew out an EMI lathe and also an EMI Neve desk, and we set it up he set it up and we started cutting dub plates, and he was using mine and Josh's tunes and tunes that you were giving him to reference just to be able to dial in his dub plate cutter, but he blew about 3 or 4 heads during that, so that's $100,000 down the drain right there, you know what I mean? And I was remembering
he didn't really ever get it right, but I think you might have been there, but we took Dillinger and Lemon D to meet him.
Yes, that's right. And that I think that blew ahead as well.
But we left them out. I remember the first time Dillinger and Lemon D came to New Zealand, and that absolutely changed everything.
That changed a lot. I've talked about a lot about that time that we were sound checking at the ministry in Christchurch, and I played him one of mine and Josh's tunes, and he gave us the be-all and end-all of advice, which was get an EMU sampler and a couple of these different compressors and you'll be away, and he was absolutely right. It was the most pivotal moment, you know, but I've talked about it so fondly and so much now that it's kind of, the shine's wearing off, you know.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you know, for all of us then, I don't know if people when they looked back at the history of the music now and they listened to the tunes that Dillinger was making in 94, 95, 96, 97, can you imagine what it was like to bring him out? Like, we were like, whoa. And Lemon D too, you know, like, but like there was this worship for Carl that was just, you know,
it is worship, right? Like I've said it before as well. Like, you know, the mystique, and because we didn't have the access, the mystique that surrounded these artists, that, you know, we put them on such high pedestals, and you know, I
don't think they understood it. See, I always, even though I was bringing these people out, like all the different people, and spending all this time with them, I still felt so in awe of them that it was hard for me to connect with them as human beings.
Yeah, bro, I remember.
I felt like they were superhuman, you know?
Yeah, and also times when you'd bring them out and you'd put them up on such a high pedestal, and then you meet them in their dicks, you know? I remember that happening a couple of times, you know? I won't say any names, but it was just like, oh, bummer.
I'll tell you something I would like to mention here, if we're going through the history, is since I've been over here, there is still, and I don't like to focus on bad things, but there is still a lot of resentment towards me and Dave, because artists over here think that we purposefully left a whole lot of people out of bringing over, and it ruined their careers out in New Zealand and Australia.
Holy shit.
Yeah, it's still going on. I won't mention, there's one person in particular that I won't mention, but some people can probably figure out who it is. And like, come on, man. We were just spending all our money to bring over the music that we liked. What should we do? Bring out music we don't like? You know, like, I don't understand that.
I mean, I'd show me a promoter, maybe off the festivals, but show me a club promoter who books niche events that doesn't book artists that they purely like. You know what I mean? It's hard.
I mean, if they do,
you'd be hard pressed.
If they do, they're not really into it so much. It's more a business for them.
Yeah, totally.
And as much as it was a business for me, like, I had to mix business with pleasure, because, like, okay, shall I bring Doc Scott out, or a jump up artist that a few people in New Zealand want to see? You know, I'm going to go for Doc Scott every time. You know. Yeah.
You've literally just jogged my memory of who it is, but I'm not going to say either. Oh man, I couldn't.
Well, you know, there was a camp that was similar to the sounds that we're bringing out that really was not happy with us, and one of them confronted me when I went on one of my dub plate cutting missions to London.
Yeah. Hey, let's talk about that, because to me that was the pilgrimage. That was your rite of fucking passage. If you made your way to Music House and you were there and you had producers there who were giving you dubs and letting you cut dub plates, that was it. You were in, weren't you?
Yeah. So I used to go there for like 3 years in a row. I think I went there and spent like 2 or 3 weeks, and I would stay with, very kindly, Jane would put me up, Storm, and I would just go down to Music House and be the first one in line there and just scrounge dubs basically. And you know, some people took care of me, like Scotty and Marcus would leave CDs for me at the cutting house, and I got the evils from lots of DJs because they're like, "Hey, who the fuck's this guy?
How'd you get that? Yeah.
How come you got it?" I was like, yeah, Scotty gave it to me. Yeah. Can I get a rub on that? You know, oh, well, you have to ring Scotty, mate. Huh? Who are you?
Yeah. It's a fucking madness.
I mean, I met some amazing, you made some really good connections there. Like, you know.
Oh my God, yeah.
It was the first time I ever, like people that I'd spoken to online, but it's the first time I ever met Clute in there. Another really influential DJ in New Zealand, like really changed everything. And like the first time I ever went to Music House, I was like, I'm going to be the first one there. I know what time everyone gets there. I'm going to be the first one there. Not sure if people realize how big the lines used to be at Music House and how long you had to wait. Like you could wait for 4 hours and then Groove Rider will turn up and you're the back of the line again, you know? But anyway, I got there this morning and I was like, yes, I'm going to be the first one there. And I walk up and there's already someone there. And I was like, what the fuck? It was Duncan Spirit.
Rest in peace, Dunk.
Yeah, and, he was so lovely. He gave me a bunch of tunes and we had a good chat. I'd actually spoken to him online before, but in those days we didn't have cell phones, so we couldn't really warn each other that we're going to be at Music House. We just kind of like, we were there and, you know, and people getting, I mean, I think I've told you this, maybe you don't know, but I was at Music House the day the Messiah shit went down.
Oh, fuck, were you? I didn't know you were there.
Man, I was there. It was hilarious.
So, I mean, let's for all the youngins out there who may be picking up on this podcast and liking these yarns of old, do you want to explain what went down with Messiah?
I've heard so many different versions of this, but basically I got there as Kamal and Rob were leaving. And from what I can gather from all the stories that have been put together, I mean, they'd been on Renegade Hardware, Trouble on Vinyl since their first releases. And but Messiah had become so big that there was a bidding war for it. And they had a unspoken contract. I don't think they'd actually signed anything. I don't know the full ins and outs. Maybe they did. But anyway, they'd been down at they'd been in London because they were Scottish, right? And they'd been in London having meetings with different labels. From what I've heard, it was Virus, Prototype, Bad Company, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, and they'd also been at Music House and getting a load of people to cut it because it was early days for that tune and everyone wanted it. And the guys from Trouble on Vinyl, Renegade Hardware heard about it, and obviously they felt that they deserved exclusive and like no one was going to take it away from them kind of thing. And I think it was Mark who came down to Music House looking for them, not happy about it. And they'd left and just left. So I didn't see it personally myself, but he chased them and took the DAT out of their bag, like knocked them to the ground, took the DAT out of their bag from what I can hear. And when I got there, Kamal and Rob had come back and they were really upset about what had happened because it was quite an aggressive kind of confrontation. And obviously they didn't have the DAT anymore. And there was a lot of things that went on then, and I don't want to talk too much about it because I might get embroiled in it. But I'll tell you the funniest thing about that day was like a load of people had already cut it, like so there was dubs in there, and but DAT was gone now. Mark had the DAT, so nobody could cut it anymore. And then all these people were turning up to Music House wanting to cut it, and Ed Rush walks into the cutting room and he says to Leon like, "Yeah, where's the DAT?" And Leon's like, "Oh, it's gone." He's like, "Yeah, fuck that." And he's like, "Who's got a dub?" And like Fresh had a dub cut there, and Ed Rush is like, "Oh, I'm getting a rub off that." so Leon cut Ed Rush a dub off Fresh's dub,
My God, crackle and all.
That's the level that tune had like got to, you know. But
yeah, that tune was fucked up, man. I got to also at this point interject and say, fucking rest in peace, Leon Chu as well, man. One of the fucking best to ever do it.
Such a good guy, man. Like he used to
such a good guy, bro.
Put up with me calling from New Zealand, going,
mate,
hey,
same here.
hey Leon, someone's left a CD for me. Can you cut this? And I'll get the courier. And I don't know if I can explain in those days how difficult that was to do. You know. Like,
oh, mate.
When I was in London, I used to go to Transco where they sold the actual lacquers, the blank lacquers, and buy a big box of them and take them back to Music House and put my little stash of blank plates underneath the desk at Music House. property of Presha, do not touch. Yeah, and obviously I just keep going back there every day trying to get more and more tunes to cut. And yeah, I have to say there's a few people who still owe me a blank plate. Like I used to get phone calls like yeah, Geoff, I'm down at Music House and they've got no 12-inch plates left. I hear you got some under the thing here. Is there any way I could buy one off you? Sure, man, no problem. I've never seen any money for them.
Jeez.
I'm looking at you. I'm looking at you, J Magic.
Shout out Jamie. Jesus. I was lucky enough to be at Music House for the final weekend of them at Eden Grove in Holloway.
Oh yeah.
So there was massive, you know, the choose through a massive fucking Jamaican block party basically, and everyone who was anyone from any scene ever that came out of the UK was there that day. Fucking hell, it was mental, bro. Wow, I got the second to last dub plate ever cut by Leon at that premises. Groove Rider was the one who stayed to the very end after me. He was like, I'm not fucking, you're not getting it elsewhere, mate.
I've still got loads of Music House stickers that Leon gave me.
Oh, man. Fuck, those would be worth fucking fortune.
The memories, though, man, like that just kind of like, that was such a crazy place. Like, you know, I saw so many personalities, like, you know, okay, I'm not going to tell that story.
I went with Jane. Jane took me for my very first cutting session at Music House, and that's how I ended up getting on so well with Leon. We were hanging out and going to have dinner at Jane's place that night with like Keaton and Leon and myself, and it was fucking cool, bro. But yeah, definitely got some stare downs from some DJs larger than myself, put it that way.
Yeah, well, I was in there. The times when I was in there, I was cutting. Like the first CD that I had was like Marcus Intellect's Universe and Love and Happiness. Like when they'd just been made, you know. Can you imagine how they felt about me having them and not having them? And that's right, I cut Deadline there as well. Yeah, but yeah, it was a lot. And then going to actually played at Blue Note at Camden Lock, and like all the people, a bunch of people who'd given me tunes came down to hear me play. So here I was playing at Metalhead's Blue Note at Camden Lock with Total Science, Digital, Spirit, and I can't remember who else. But in the audience and me playing their dubs, like, you know, pretty special.
Yeah, that is fucking special, bro. Far out. Well, like I said, these conversations could go on for hours, and I'm sure they could go on for hours, but I'm trying to keep them into a condensed 1 hour, but I've definitely got to have you back on the podcast, bro, because there's so much more that we haven't even covered, you know, so much more. So
yeah, for sure, man.
It'd be also great to get like a bunch of us together chatting, and because we're back in lockdown here in New Zealand at the moment, fucking due to awesome coronavirus, fucking level 4 point something, but
yeah, my parents were telling me.
Yeah, it's gnarly, bro, but it's stifled a lot of creativity this time around. I know a lot of promoters are taking a much harder hit this time around as well, you know, because there was a lot on the fucking cards that was lined up for the summer that maybe sort of.
I think you guys have got to pick up your vaccinations. That's the situation.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's fully fucking. That's happening at the moment, but there's also the stragglers who are not interested in it. But let's catch up this again, because this is an evolving series, bro. This is all about people like you, and then people who are just fresh to the scene telling their stories and what inspires them to do it as well. But it's really important to get the foundations laid and hear from people like yourself who were there at the very beginning, who put fucking so much on the line to create this scene, you know.
And I think people in New Zealand should be proud, because we, you know, from early on, we had one of the best scenes anywhere in the world, and we got told that constantly. And for a small country, I think we all did amazingly well putting that together.
And there's a whole generation of people doing it as well now. Like, you know, like New Zealand's back again at the forefront of the world of drum and bass because of the fact that we have been out of lockdown for so long, and international artists have been able to come back over here and tour and, you know, promote their albums and do live shows and sell out arenas and all that sort of shit, you know. So it's all very, it's amazing how much it's sort of evolving and revolving as well at the same time, you know.
Yeah, well, New Zealand people are passionate, and they really dive headfirst into stuff when they're into it, and it's great to see.
Yeah, nice one, brother. Well, you take care, and guten Abend, meine Freundin.
Not yet.
Oh, is it? Not the Arvo yet? Okay. Oh, no. Yeah. Guten Tag, mein Freundin.
It's midday.
How is your German?
Rubbish.
Same. And on that note, I'll leave it. That is another episode of the History of New Zealand Drum and Bass. Catch you next time.
Thanks, mate.
You've been listening to the History of New Zealand Drum and Bass series. For episode schedules and podcast information, follow us at NZ DnB Podcast on Facebook and Instagram, with new episodes weekly on all major podcasting platforms. This is the History of New Zealand Drum and Bass.